The air was thick with laughter, dust, and the smell of sweat-soaked uniforms. A dozen SEALs stood around the pull-up bar, their voices echoing through the training yard as they watched one of their own chase a long-standing base record. 200 pull-ups without rest. No one had ever come close to breaking it in 10 years. At the edge of the group stood a woman in civilian clothes, quiet and observant. Her name was Claire Hayes, and everyone thought she was just visiting. A journalist, maybe, or a relative of one of the officers. She didn't look like she belonged there. Not until she spoke. "Do you mind if I give it a go?" Every head turned. A few laughed outright. One of the SEALs smirked and said, "Ma'am, this isn't a photo op." But Commander Rhodes, watching from a few feet away, didn't laugh. He studied her, the way her hands flexed, the way her stance aligned, like someone who'd done this before. "Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you were watching from. I love knowing who was listening." Claire stepped forward, her calm composure masking the thundering of her heart. She wasn't there to prove them wrong. Not really. She was there because of a promise, one made years ago under the roar of helicopter blades and gunfire, to a man who didn't make it home. As she gripped the metal bar, the chatter dimmed. Someone muttered, "This'll be good." The first pull-up came effortlessly, then another, and another. By the 20th, the smirks began to fade. By the 60th, the laughter stopped altogether. Her arms trembled, sweat slid down her temple, but her breathing stayed even. Focused. Measured. She remembered the voice of Captain Morgan, her old CO, echoing in her mind. "Discipline isn't about strength, Hayes. It's about remembering who you're doing it for." That voice had carried her through more than one storm, and it carried her now. Rhodes stepped closer, his brows furrowed as realization began to dawn. That name, Hayes, he'd heard it before. Years ago, there'd been a Sergeant Claire Hayes in the Special Operations Program, one of the first women to qualify for advanced field training before vanishing after a classified mission. But she couldn't be the same person, could she? At 100 pull-ups, her palms began to bleed. The crowd, once skeptical, now stood silent. The rhythmic pull of her body had turned hypnotic, each motion a testament to something more than muscle. It was endurance born of grief, of guilt, of unfinished duty. One of the younger SEALs, barely out of academy, whispered, "Who is she?" By the time she reached 180, the sun had begun to dip. The world around her blurred. The sounds of boots scuffing, distant laughter from the mess hall, everything fading into the hum of her heartbeat. At 198, her grip faltered. A gasp went through the watching crowd. Commander Rhodes instinctively stepped forward, ready to catch her if she fell. But she didn't. She tightened her jaw, exhaled once, and finished the last two with a steady rhythm that silenced the entire yard. 200. 201. The record was broken, and for a moment no one said a word. Then, slowly, the silence gave way to applause. Hesitant at first, then thunderous. Rhodes approached her as she dropped from the bar, her hands shaking, blood smearing her palms. "Who trained you?" he asked quietly. Claire looked up, her voice low but steady. "You did, indirectly." He frowned. Then she continued, "You trained Captain Morgan. He trained me. We were supposed to come back together from our last op in Kunar Province, but only one of us did." A shadow crossed his face. He remembered Morgan, the kind of soldier you never forget. Brave, reckless, loyal to the bone. "I promised him I'd carry on his legacy," she said. "He told me about this place, about the record. Said I'd know when it was time." Rhodes looked at her hands, torn, bleeding, trembling, and then at her eyes, unbroken. The crowd of SEALs stood around them, no longer doubting, no longer mocking. One of them spoke up. "You didn't have to prove anything." "I wasn't trying to," she replied softly. "I was remembering someone who did." The commander gave a single nod, a soldier's respect. Captain Morgan would have been proud. Claire smiled faintly, wiping the blood on her shirt. That's all I needed to hear. As night fell, the yard emptied. The air smelled faintly of rain, the sky dark but peaceful. Claire lingered under the pull-up bar, her silhouette framed by the fading light. She traced the bar once more, whispered something no one else could hear, and walked away. Not a guest anymore, but one of them. Because real strength isn't about breaking records, it's about keeping promises no one else remembers. And courage, true courage, isn't loud or celebrated. It's the quiet moment when someone chooses to rise, even when no one's watching. Because kindness doesn't vanish. It waits, and it finds its way back. And sometimes the people we thought were gone return, not in uniform, but in spirit, to remind us what honor still means. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Whispered Words for more tales of courage, sacrifice, and the quiet heroes who remind us what strength truly is. Tell me in the comments, who would you break a record for?